Welcome, welcome, welcome to the final leg of the Global Grief Conference. I'm so freaking excited to be here. I'm so excited to have been a part of this journey. I'm so excited to be able to share a little bit about myself, my situation, and hopefully it impacts someone else. Hopefully, it resonates with someone else, and they get a few takeaways from everything that everyone here is sharing because grief is hard. Grief feels a hell of a lot like fear. And in this day and age, it's especially with COVID and everything happening, I don't know, I found myself after, especially after my daughter had passed away in 2016, I found myself, I was hiding, to put it bluntly. I would sit in my office, I'm an entrepreneur, I would sit in my office and I would type away and I would just enclose myself. I wouldn't come out. And like going grocery shopping was a chore. Going Hi Joshua, thank you so much. Going grocery shopping was a chore. It was like, man, I felt for the first time in my life, traveling all around the countryside as a child and going to many different schools in many different states and meeting many, many, many different people, it was it was a shock to find myself not being adventurous. It was a shock to find myself not seeking adventure. Like I wanted the stability, I wanted the comfort, I wanted the safety, and I wanted to hold on to it as much as I possibly could. I just wanted to surround myself with things that I could control. I didn't want out of the ordinary things at this moment in my life because I had just had this amazing shock to my system and I was scared, I was paranoid, I was petrified. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to handle a situation. I was afraid of losing another child. I was afraid of pretty much everything. I was afraid of breaking down in public because when I grew up, tears were a sign of weakness. And I was petrified of breaking down in public and having people see me cry and think, oh my God, that girl, she's crazy. Like, who does that stuff? And it wasn't necessarily that I had or was bowing down to what other people thought of me because my whole life I grew up, it's like, I don't care what people think. I don't care what people say. That's none of my business. It's none of my concern. And I go do my own thing. But I had found myself in 2016 and 2017, I had found myself at that exact fork in the road. Like I was worried about what people were thinking. I was worried about what people were saying. I was worried about everything. I was worried about losing a child. I was worried about my marriage falling apart. I was worried about, going to the grocery store and forgetting an item. Like, this is how worried I became, which was completely out of context and out of character with who I am. And so I constantly was in fear. And that fear was leading me down a path that I had absolutely no idea how to control, absolutely no idea what to do with. And so as I journeyed down that path and as I started seeking more mental mindset, that mental help to get me on a better track, to deal with this grief, to understand it, to understand the trauma that I had been facing, that I hadn't been dealing with like my entire life. Because I don't know if you know this or not, I'm going to tell you a secret, just a little one, just a little one. We don't get out of childhood without trauma. There, I said it. I said it. So I hope you're paying attention. I hope you heard it. I didn't want to yell it because I didn't want to freak anyone out. But we literally do not get out of childhood without trauma. Every person faces trauma. Every person faces grief. Every person faces heartache and adversity and all of these things in life. And it's it is what it's not what, but it's how you attack it, how you go about it, how you survive it and move forward and move through it and move with it as to what defines your life, what defines you, what defines how you want. Like, it's your life. You get to choose how you go about your day, how you go about your grief, how you walk your journey, how you build your business, how you live your life, how you do all the things. And damn it, I forgot to shut the notifications off. Sorry. This is live. So, but when you're in the middle of grief, when grief is hitting you hard, you just want to be able to control something. You want, whether that's your schedule, whether that's um your day-to-day business, whether that's going to the grocery store and checking things off of a list, whether that is making sure that your house is show worthy, whatever it is, you want to be able to control it. And you want to control as many of the things in your life as possible. But I'm going to tell you another secret. This is a hard lesson that I learned along the way as well. There's only two things in life that you get to control. Two things. And this will forever hold true. This should be a law of life. There's only two things that you get to control in life. One is your reaction, and one is I forgot what the other one was. Your responses and your reactions. So how you perceive things, how you take things in, how you process things. These are things that you get to control, and how you talk to others, how you treat others, how you do those things. That is what you can control as well. You can't control anything that anyone else says, anything that anyone else does. Like, try and control a 2-year-old. Tell me how that goes. Try to tell your 90-year-old grandmother, what to do. See how that goes. Like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And when you realize that the only thing that you can control is yourself out of this whole world is yourself, then, things become a lot simpler, because then you start focusing on becoming a better you, controlling how you're able to react and respond to situations, how you process the stuff. Like, you get to. Joshua asks, is it possible to overprocess? Absolutely. I've talked about this all weekend. Like, your brain goes into hyperdrive and you start processing, you start figuring out or thinking about 500 different scenarios, for someone saying hello. Like, why'd they say hello? Well, was it in this tone? Was it in that tone? Oh my gosh, are they mad at me? Did I do something wrong? Like over processing. And that's just like a generic situation. But I have been down that path before where I have uh, overanalyzed. And now, are you talking about overanalyzing or overprocessing? Just a little more clarification. So, um, but when you're in fear, when you're in grief, and because when when my daughter passed in 2016, I was petrified to go to sleep. I thought that if I go to sleep, I'm gonna get a call and I'm gonna find out that I've lost another child. Or I'm gonna get a call to go to the hospital because I'm in the process of losing another child. Or someone's gonna beat on my door, and I just so at nighttime, after she passed away, for several months afterward, I, like, didn't wanna go to sleep. I didn't want to I didn't want to wake up and find out that something had happened. And so, hold on. I think it's more processing than analyzing. So over-processing, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking for the over-processing. Um, if you can give me just a little more clarification on that. So processing, going through the stages or the stages of grief. But when you realize you're going down this path of fear, this path of control, because you feel, as an example, hold on just a moment. Let me see here. As an example, going too fast through grief. So, my theories on going through the stages of grief are I believe that life happens in levels. I believe that life happens in stages. So, while I was processing grief, and I'll use myself as an example, while I was processing grief back in 2016 when my daughter had was killed in a car wreck, um, I was processing the grief because I knew all the stages, I knew all the things. But I think sometimes we get stuck in a situation or stuck in a stage, and it takes us a minute to move through it. Now, I knew all the stages of grief. I knew when I was hitting a certain stage, and I knew when I was hitting the next stage. And so I don't know if it's more like going through them too fast, but I think that okay, let me just shorten the answer up here. I believe however you go through the stages of grief is perfect for you. If you feel that you have been through the stages of grief and you feel that you have processed to your capacity at this moment the stages of grief, then no, I don't believe you can go through them too fast. But there's a caveat to that. I do believe that you will bounce back through the stages multiple times. I don't think that you just get to a stage and it's almost like you get a badge and you complete it and you're done and you move on and you never come back. I don't believe that at all. I believe it's a ping pong session and you keep going back and forth between all the different stages multiple times throughout your life. And because I believe that I went through the stages really fast as well. But then when I wrote my book, I went back through the stages at a deeper level. And that's why I said, or mentioned earlier about like levels of grief, just like levels of life. So when you learn something, the more that you do it and the more that you go through it, the better able you are to handle the situation and to understand it, if that makes sense. It's just like tying your shoes. You start learning it and you're kind of clunky at it at first. It's hard, it's difficult. You want to scream and cry and stop and have someone else do it for you, but they can't. I mean, they can't tie your shoe, but that's not going to teach you how to do it. You have to learn it for yourself. And the more you do it, you find better ways of going through it, and you find better ways of going through it faster and with a deeper understanding. Absolutely, you are so welcome, Joshua. And if you have any more questions, please type them in the chat. I'd love to answer them. Like you're the first person that's interacted with me. I've had the I call it the morning shift all weekend, and so it's been kind of crazy. So yeah, if you got questions, please ask them. So I try to keep them these little presentations quick and simple and easy and um, nothing too strenuous. So back to grief because it's a never-ending topic and a never-ending subject, and it while there's days that we're happy and we're laughing and it's a good day, there's also days that come and we just want to lay in bed and cry and pull the covers over our head and not get out for a week. And both of those are just fine. And how you process your grief is going to look completely 100% different than how I process my grief. Um, I know for me that when I hit extremely tough situations, um, where most people tend to wanna cry, I tend to laugh, and then when people laugh, I tend to cry. It's like I'm kinda like a little backwards in a lot of my, responses and different things, and at first, it bothered me. At first, it was like, "Gosh, I feel like I'm broken. I feel like I'm just out of control here. Like, why don't I have normal responses? Why am I not normal? Why don't I like cry in these situations? Why don't I laugh in these situations? Why do I have them reversed?" And it's not that you're broken, it's just your body has learned, it's been trained and taught how to process different emotions or how to navigate certain situations, and it's a coping mechanism. And, we learn how to cope. Some of them are good, like, coping mechanisms aren't all bad, just like grief isn't all bad. It's you know, you can there's good grief and there's bad grief. There's, good and bad everything, I feel. Uh, but I don't know where I was going with all this. So, if you have questions, pop them in the chat. I'd love to answer them. Otherwise, I will wrap up here with, ways to help you step out of that fear and start living your life again. So, I had, when in 2017, I had booked, a trip to California. It was a business trip. It was to go to a very small mastermind, to for entrepreneurs to, get together and brainstorm and get some more knowledge and different things like that to boost my business at the time. And I went thinking it was gonna solve all my issues, solve all my business issues. And this was the year after my daughter had passed. And I went out there and I was stuck in this stage of the grief cycle and I just couldn't get out of it. And it was I kept asking different questions and asking how to do this and how to do that and how to do this. And in reality, um, I was just scared. I was scared of the rejection. I was scared of the hurt. I was scared of the loss. I was scared of taking that next step and falling flat on my face, of losing credibility, of losing friends, of losing business partners, of losing all of these things in my business. And so I didn't. I withheld. Fast forward another couple years, and I'm still not, even though I don't realize it, I'm still not processing my grief very well. I mean, in certain aspects, I'm doing great with it. And then in other aspects, I'm doing really shitty with it. And it wasn't until we lost our granddaughter last year, last October, that I had a deeper understanding for the grief that I was going through where I was at within the process, how much I still had to process, how much I still had to unpack and analyze and figure out and come to terms with all these things, and how much I needed to heal uh, physically and mentally. And I realized that I had been hiding out in my office, doing my business or building my business and not processing my grief. It's just like I would hold up here in these little four walls and just contain myself and work on my business and avoid a lot of the other things. Avoid the grief, avoid, dealing with the deep stuff, avoid dealing with anything that would cause, you know, feelings for lack of a better term. And it wasn't until I started writing my book that those feelings, the floodgates started opening, that I actually started healing and able to talk about stuff, able to process the emotions that I was under. And it's different for everyone. Not everyone is going to want to write a book. Not everyone is going to listen to NDEs on and have that be part of their grieving process. Not everyone is going to all of a sudden say, you know what, I want to focus on grief. I want to focus on helping people through grief, and I want to focus on it right now. Like, and boom, immediately, this is it. Um, Not everybody can do that. And so it takes a very special type of segment of the population to be able to want to talk about grief, and all the people are, and not all of them, but there's a lot of people here that are talking about it. So if you're not finding help with grief, um, maybe you're not looking hard enough here, or maybe you need to look in a different segment. Maybe you need to reach out to some of the people that are on these panels and get, advice from them. See if, their programs and their processes will help you with your grief, if they will help you navigate your situation. I am not a psychologist, a therapist. I'm not any of those things. The only thing that I have is my firsthand experience going through it, and then helping my children and, family members and my daughter-in-law, especially, and my son who just lost their child, helping them through it as well. And it's a messy, bumpy road and filled with tons of tripwires and speed bumps and all of the things. But when you get on the path and you truly want to heal, and I'm not saying that people don't want to heal, but I think that people put up excuses, and people put up like um people put up walls when it comes to their feelings and their grief and their hurt and their pain, because they feel like if they say anything, they can be taken advantage of, or it'll be used against them, or they'll be thought of as cowardly and weak and whatnot. And it's just, it to be honest, it happens. I won't lie. It does happen. But I also think that when you come to terms with your grief, when you come to terms with your experiences, when you come to terms with how you process things, how you manage things, that's when the true magic starts to happen. And when you really truly start to um, utilize the grief process and really step into it and really heal yourself. Um, will you ever be 100% healed? Absolutely not. I don't believe that anybody will ever be absolutely 100% healed. Just because we keep piling on traumas, we keep piling on grief, we keep piling on hurt and pain and all those things every day. It's like layers, and they keep getting boom, 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 layers and layers and layers of pain and grief and hurt and suffering. I mean, we do have the happy times and stuff in there as well. We have layers of that as well. But if you look back at your friends and your family, and you you look at the relationship that you've had with them through the years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road, 20 years, you've had, family members for how many decades? And you look at your relationship with them, and it's not like it was all happy. It wasn't all bad. There's always these moments that you see in there that were some are good, some are bad, some are just are. And so it's a layered process, and it's hard to pull the emotion out of it and look at just the black and white facts of anything. And so the same with grief is that there's layers that go in that are involved with it. There's layers that happen, there's layers, of the healing process as well. And there's a saying in business is when you're ready, for the next step, it will show up. So in business, when you're ready for the next layer, when you're ready to level up in your business, when you're ready for the next coach, when you're ready for the next tier, when you're ready for the next thing, it will show up. It doesn't show up until you're ready. So you constantly have to be doing the mindset work. You constantly have to be improving yourself daily, all the time. All the time you're improving yourself, reading, meditating, uh, listening to your mentors, doing your trainings and different things like that. And the more that you do those and the more that you internalize the stuff, the more you're able to move to that next level. And I believe the same thing is true for grief as well. The more that you're focusing on the mindset work, the more that you're focusing on your grief healing, the more that you're focusing on the journey and you're doing the things, whatever it is for you, because it's different for every person. So, what I do for my grief healing is not going to be the same as what you do for your grief healing. And that's okay. We each have to understand what helps us and do more of that, as opposed to just what people tell you to do, because then you're doing what they want you to do instead of what's best for yourself. So, anyway, off on a tangent tonight, apparently. Uh, but grief does feel a hell of a lot like fear. And the way that I stepped out of my fear and started living my life again was, first of all, I had to recognize that I was in that cycle. I was in that fear cycle. And once I realized I was in that fear cycle and that I was literally petrified to just go buy damn groceries, like I had to realize I was in that cycle. And then I could actually change my thoughts and I could change my actions. And so I started going to the store more often. I started stepping out of my office. I started cutting back my hours that I'm in my office so that I'm actually out in the rest of the house navigating with my family, uh, having, family time, cooking meals again, going to the grocery store, doing the stuff. I was actually living life again rather than being a hermit in my office. And it has been extremely amazing to get back into life, to feel like I have a life again rather than not petrified by fear of loss. Because it is a mindset. Um, so I would say, for me, stepping back out there, realizing that I was stuck in that fear loop, and then just going back out into the real world, making a plan of attack and doing it. Small motions, small movements. And so last year I signed up to go into a beauty pageant. Didn't Never done a beauty pageant in my entire life. Don't even know all the process about it. Don't know anything about it. I'm 45 years old and I'm entering into a beauty pageant. And stepping out of my comfort zone. I'm stepping out into real life. I'm understanding that if I do fall, it's, I'm to blame. This is my journey and I will embrace it no matter what happens. I'm also entering into a fitness competition because fitness is a priority for me because I've let it lapse over the last several years because of the fear, you don't go out, you don't do this, fear of this and blah, 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 blah. And you start pushing your excuses out because everyone's got excuses and you have amazing excuses. I know I do anyway, for why I'm not achieving this, and this, which it all comes back down to fear. Like you're scared of something. You're petrified of something, and usually it's failure or to look like a fool. And so I decided that last year, and now it's turning into this year, that I was going to step out of that. I was going to start my coaching program for grief to help entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs with grief and building their business, because I believe that as a mom who's lost a child, my business suffered extravagantly. I literally, when I found out my daughter died, uh, I literally burned my business to the ground. I'm like, I could care less about it. I didn't. I lost my clients. I lost everything. And now going back and building it again, and then losing my granddaughter, I was cognizant of the fact that um, of what I had done before, except now I burned my business down a second time, but in a completely different way. So it was like, because I let all my clients go so that I could focus on the grief training and talking and public speaking and all of those things. And so I signed up. That was another thing, is I signed up for this grief conference, and it's I've loved it. I've loved every moment. And then I asked for more time on here so that I could get more experience of talking about it, because I'm new to talking about grief. And sometimes I don't know how my words come across and how my stories come across, and if they're even impacting anyone. And as long as they help one person, it's all been worth it for me, everything. And so just stepping out of that fear and knowing that no matter the outcome, I'll be able to handle it mentally, emotionally, and physically. I'll be able to handle whatever is thrown at me, because it's how I choose to live my life. And I'm a firm believer in, if I have a fear, I will face it head on. The obstacle is the way, and there's only one way to battle it, and that is to face it. Whether that's with, my grief, my fear, uh, finances, business, whatever it is. So thank you, Joshua. Thank you so much. Um, and with that, uh, I'm pretty well done with my presentation. So, not that I had a big presentation, but I thank you guys all for being here. I'm so blessed and so truly thankful to be a part of all of this um, global grief, the Global Grief Conference. And I honestly had no idea that so many people were suffering from grief and going down this, even though we all do it, even though we all have, um, we have brushes with grief every moment of every day. Like every choice could be a grief one or not. And to me, it's this conference has really helped me with processing a lot of the stuff, and how to present it on a much deeper level. Because a lot of times we only want to do it on a very superficial level. We just want to talk about the surface stuff. That's it. And we need to be going deeper and deeper into all of the grief, all of the stuff. And yeah, I think that I've caught a few of the topics on here, and they are mind blowing. I love it. And so I hope that everyone is able to get a little bit of something out of here that they need, at least something to spark an interest to get them to diving deeper into their own grief journey and figuring out how to help themselves on a deeper level, and get to know themselves on a deeper level, because that's where you truly start healing and growing and learning, is by understanding yourself. So, if you guys want to stay in contact with me, you can go to faiths.me /DDOF for a daily dose of faith. That's my uh, mini, well, it's not a mini coaching program. That's the one where I have my 7 days of finding solid ground in the midst of a sudden loss. Um, I went live for 7 days and talked about different aspects of it on how to just like get get control of yourself, get control of where you're at, just get back to solid ground. Because after when you're facing grief, it feels like you're stuck in quicksand and you're quickly going under and gasping for breath. And that's just a little bit of a way to help you if you're feeling that. So, anyway, I love you guys. I love you all. Uh, Please reach out if you have issues, if you have concerns, if you have questions, and make sure you're taking notes on all the other speakers because they are dropping some nuggets of wisdom and some ways to help navigate your grief, how to um, help with a lot of it. So, thank you guys so much and have a wonderful evening or rest of your morning or wherever you're at in the world. Bye.